Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Inside the Birds Television. I'm Geoff Mosher. That's Adam Caplan. Of course, ITB TV is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, the nation's #1 sports book. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use that code ITB when you sign up. You'll get bonuses. Use the code ITB. All right, Adam, we decided we're not going to have a guest for this edition of ITB TV. We're going to do some fantasy football talk. So I'm looking forward to that. We're going to start to incorporate that more as the summer goes on, because pretty soon, before you know it, as long as things go according to plan with the NFL, it's going to get to be the summer and people are going to start preparing for their fantasy football drafts. And obviously the Eagles have a lot of new players. So we're going to talk about that. First thing I want to do, though, is just provide a little bit of an information update on the Jalen Reagor situation. Obviously, Jalen is the first-round draft pick. It's my understanding, Adam, as you start to see some picks signed here over the last few weeks in the NFL, that talks are ongoing. They're close. They're amicable. There's no holdup right now. There's no headbutting going on. And that as we sit here today on May 22nd, I believe, on Friday, it's very possible that a deal could be done in the next few days. And that I know that they'd like to have a deal done by June 1st. That's kind of a target time date. Doesn't mean it's going to be, but that's what they're kind of looking at right now.
I wonder why they picked June 1st. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so the only thing I know about that situation is because there's obviously a lot of chatter about the NFL trying to resume, places trying to get open. I think June 15th is a number that's kind of being floated around where people would like to start seeing if they can, get people into the facilities and start having camps. Right now, everything's been done virtually. By the way, the rookie symposium is being done virtually. So guys who are, how they always, where is it usually? It's always in one spot, right? The symposium.
Well, they moved it. Yeah. I think it's been in Ohio the last couple of years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Well, now they're still having seminars and they're still having people speak, but it's being done the same way you and I are doing this Inside the Bird. So
cool. Through Zoom.
Got it. Yeah. Through Zoom and things like that. So we'll see. I mean, today is Friday, May 22nd. It's very possible by Monday we'll have an update on it.
Well, bottom line is Reagor will be on time whenever you don't have to worry about that. Right. There won't be you can't really hold out when you don't have a contract, but what Reagor is very important to what they do. And we'll get into that as we talk fantasy. And it's funny as we transition here to fantasy talk, someone had asked me about Sanders in fantasy because I drafted him. I'm in a league now. We're actually drafting now. It's a dynasty league it's a startup dynasty league. Dynasty leagues mean, Geoff, and our listeners who don't know, you keep all your players from year to year. So whoever I draft in this draft, I could have for the next 10 years if I want.
Right.
So you're going to take players earlier than you normally would because you're projecting what they're going to be over not just this year, which is only going to be maybe 10 to 12% of their career. It's going to be over the next 8 to 10 years. So I took Miles Sanders early, and people are all over me. How could you take him in the first round? And people just can't think straight sometimes. They get in their mind. He's not a first-round pick. Okay, well, guess what? If you think he's going to be a special player, you sure as hell take him in the first round.
Well, you just hit on it. I think the key for a dynasty league, or I'm in more of a keeper league where you keep 2 players on your roster every year. And just a quick story, the guy who won the Super Bowl in our league last year, he had as keepers Christian McCaffrey and Mike Thomas, and he drafted Lamar Jackson.
Oh,
so
let me tell
you how he blew our league into bits.
Obviously, Jesus.
I predicted him winning it all because I beat him 2 years ago in the Super Bowl when he had McCaffrey and Thomas. I knew he was going to keep them, and once he got Lamar, I knew it was over. But
when did you start this league? By the way, when did you start this league?
We started, how long have I been in this league?
Yeah, when was McCaffrey? Yeah, so has McCaffrey had him since 17?
I think he's had McCaffrey for 2 years.
Okay.
So and do you have to since 18?
Do you have to throw the guys back after 2 or 3 years? Could you keep it for as long as you want?
No, we don't have a cap on how long you can keep him, but there tends to be a lot of movement anyway. That very few guys have been kept for more than 3 or 4 years because, as you know, take McCaffrey for example. He is special, but he's also a running back, and he could be hurt next year. I mean, his numbers could decline. The next new running back or wide receiver is on. In our league, for whatever reason, you don't see a whole lot of guys, maybe other than the true cream of the crop. So that Aaron Rodgers is kept for more than 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and running backs in keeper leagues, typically
10 to 11 running backs go in the first round
in keeper leagues.
Right.
I was at a keeper league from 1990, and I got out because the rules were awful. Probably got out at like 05, 06. And every year, the problem is if you made the playoffs, you're hosed at running back because you're going to be picking in the back of the first round. So running backs are always going to go early, whether it's a dynasty league or keeper league. And in this dynasty league, 10 running backs went in the first round, and the other two picks were I think Devontae Adams and Michael Thomas, because they're dominant at their position. And there's a drop off after that.
So now Lamar Jackson did not go in the first round in your draft, or no quarterbacks?
No. Mahomes went the second. Yeah, I'm a guy who does not draft quarterbacks ever
early. I usually wait to
I agree.
Seventh through ninth round, but because it's a dynasty league where you're keeping these players year after year, I seriously was thinking of taking Mahomes in the second. It's probably my one regret. I wish I would have done that and just sucked it up, because I know he's going to be great. Last year he was hurt, and then Tyreek Hill missed a bunch of games, so he's going to bounce back. But again, when you're keeping year to year, you want like sort of a skeleton team of what it's going to look like. 6 or 7 key players for you over 5-6 years. It would have been nice to have Mahomes, but oh well, I didn't get him.
Don't you think you can make a pretty strong argument, even over Mahomes, to keep Lamar Jackson as a late first-round pick, because he basically gives you a quarterback and maybe even a flex running back into one spot? I mean, he's the only guy I would consider.
I know. When the only quarterbacks I could remember who were like you just
described were Randall Cunningham, ironically, an Eagle. This is an Eagle show. Randall was ridiculous because of the running. Michael Vick was another ex-Eagle when he was at his height, but the problem is he just could not sustain it. Injured a lot.
Right.
Running quarterbacks now for fantasy. Josh Allen. He went from a below-average fantasy quarterback to a top 10, top 12 because of his running.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the Lamar Jackson. It's just ridiculous what he's doing. Just absurd. To your point, yeah. Now the question is though, Geoff, with Lamar Jackson and these running quarterbacks, how sustainable is it? A, for an injury history, is it, because he's going to take a lot of contact. Cam Newton, by the way, perfect example of that. Great for fantasy, but eventually it's going to catch up to him. But how will Greg Roman, their OC, because the league at some point kind of catches up to you. What else does he have in his bag of tricks? We'll have to see. But quarterbacks, Geoff, let's get right into it. So we're gonna do this. Is gonna be a 2-part situation here. Let's get into quarterback here, and obviously it's Carson Wentz is the guy. Carson Wentz, when healthy, is a top 10 fantasy quarterback. Are you concerned about his injury history when you draft him?
Oh, I think you have to be concerned about his injury history. I mean, there have always been quarterbacks like that who put up very good numbers, but tend to be, for whatever reason, have various injuries that make you pause on how high you'll draft them. I can't think of one that stands out in my head right now. Aaron Rodgers for the last few years has been that. I mean, for a long time, he was the elite, maybe the first or second quarterback off the board, but then the last few years, he started to get some injuries, and that would make you think twice about where you wanted to pick him or how high you wanted to go. I think if Carson Wentz is healthy, I mean, you look at last year, right? He did play 16 games. He stayed healthy, but you and I know, and so does everybody watching, that he really struggled during a 4-game stretch there with his mechanics, with lack of weaponry. And yet, with all that said, he still finished with the 5th most touchdown passes in the league at 27. He does not throw a lot of interceptions. He only threw 7 last year. That's that was among the bottom or among the leaders in last interceptions. Go ahead.
Right, depending on your scoring, Geoff. Like in my hot big money league,
we were, because my friend and I came up with the rules. If you're going to reward defenses +2 for interceptions and fumble recoveries, then you're going to go -2. I thought -2 was fair. So it was -2 per. So Jameis Winston, who was incredible. He was killing me. I had Winston in that league.
Yeah.
And of course, he was my back. I drafted him to be my backup, but he was putting up such unbelievable numbers. He was my starter. But the damn problem was the interceptions.
That's right. Those -2s really kill. When you throw one in a while, it's not so bad. When you throw 2 or 3 a game like he was, although there were a couple of weeks where Winston would throw, say, 2 picks, but he would also have 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. So you would wind up making out in the end. But you're right.
Exactly.
It's always a roll of the dice.
Yeah, I've never seen
but I like Carson with the new weaponry, Adam. And here's what you like about what the Eagles have done. Even if Deshaun were to get hurt, they've got Reagor now. They still have Ertz and Goddard. I mean, they would have to have they're so much deeper at the pass catching position. They still have flaws. They're not perfect, but with Miles Sanders now taking that next step up too, and we'll talk about him, I feel like the cocoon around Carson is much better so that he might – I don't think the peaks and valleys that you saw last year are going to be as evident this coming year. I'm sure the Eagles better hope not. They better hope to see something more like 2017.
Yeah, so my only problem with what you were saying there
is we're just assuming that Reagor, who we both like, will be really good year one. We can't say that. He's not going to have an off season. It's highly unlikely they're going to get any on field time before training camp's open, whenever that's going to happen. So you're talking about they drafted three receivers in this draft. Okay, we don't know how good they're going to be year one. Rookie receivers more often than not don't do as well as they do later in their year 2, 3, and 4. Right. But now, if you're in a keeper league, I love Wentz for keeper dynasty league. In this dynasty league, I took Dak Prescott before Wentz simply because Prescott has never missed any time. You had CeeDee Lamb, right? You had CeeDee Lamb as their third receiver. Does it get any better than that? With Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper and Blake Jarwin is a pretty athletic tight end. Whereas with Wentz, you've got to take a leap of faith, Geoff, that these guys are going to be good football players, because we saw what happened. And I give Wentz immense amount of credit those last 4 or 5 games. But man, when Wentz was struggling, he didn't get any help because he didn't have anything.
Right, and then he really didn't have anything in December. But the help was that guys that came from the practice squad actually caught the ball, and then you saw how effective, he could be. So here's how I see it, Adam. I think you're right. It's almost like, I don't want to call it boom bust potential, but to me, he's no worse than the 10th best fantasy quarterback. But I believe if he's healthy and the weapons around him are healthy, you have an opportunity to get top 5 quarterback. And it just depends on how risky you want to be on draft day with Carson Wentz.
Yeah, he's going right now in the 8th or 9th round. By the time, if we're back with football
in late July, early August, I'd say mid to late August, he's going to be somewhere around 6 or 7. It's kind of like last year what happened. He moved up. Unfortunately, lost to Deshaun Jackson in the second week, and Alshon Jeffrey later on. So, look, if Jeffrey could come back somewhere in the first half of the regular season, gives them some physicality with those 3 rookie receivers, if they're on the field, with those 2 outstanding tight ends, Jeff's right. He could actually be top 3. You could see 35 plus touchdown passes. Plus, he does run a little bit.
Right. Absolutely. And you go back to 2017, he was in that echelon, obviously, until the injury. So we've been trying to figure out what are some baseline stats that you could expect for Carson Wentz this year. Let's talk touchdowns, Adam. I mean, again, without a whole lot of weaponry and with some inconsistency, he still threw, 27 touchdowns last year? That was tied for 5th most in football. So I'm looking at Carson Wentz this year and saying, if everything goes right, I think he could be north of 33, 34 touchdowns. If everything doesn't go right, I still think he's going to be in that 25 to 30 range. They throw the ball. The Eagles, they throw the ball.
Yeah, I can't believe he threw 27, which, by the way, over his 4 years of starting, that's only second to 33 in 2017, the year
where he was just incredible. Yeah, I think if the rookies are really good, particularly if Reagor is as good as they think he is, let's say he gets 60 catches as a rookie, that's damn good considering he's going to miss the offseason. They're not going to be on the field. With those 2 tight ends, with Sanders, who we'll get to, we're going to go to running back in a minute or so. Yeah, I think 35 touchdowns plus is very realistic.
All right, and you would anticipate fewer than 10 interceptions because he's normally not a big interception guy.
Yep.
I feel like if everything goes well, he can get to that 4,000-yard marker.
It was last year. How about that? 40-39 with a bunch of guys on the street. That's incredible. I don't know.
I guess the question is, can he get to the 4,500-yard?
Yes, because you remember his per pass attempt last year was under 7.
Right.
Which is low. 6-7 is low, but you got to understand, folks, when you draft for fantasy, you got to go. You really have to look at it objectively and look at it from an analytical point of view. What exactly was he dealing with? To finish the season, he was dealing with basically at receiver 4 street free agents or practice squad players. That's what he had. Yet he still threw over 4,000 yards. By the way, we talk about he's had injuries. He definitely has. But last year, for the first time in his career, he was not even on the injured report in the regular season. Despite the injuries on the offensive line and all the issues that he had around him, he stayed on the field. his per pass attempt will be high sevens because they are going to. We said on our show last year they're going to air it out like crazy. Well, unfortunately, Deshaun Jackson got hurt. Sean Jeffrey got hurt. They had no one who could run, and that's what you saw.
I think 4250 is a good number to look at with Carson Wentz. I think, if he stays healthy. Okay. I think that's fair. Okay. He can exceed that, but I think that's a good kind of barometer for him.
Okay, ready for this one? If Deshaun Jackson plays
13 plus games, he's going to have 45 to 4,700 yards passing.
I would agree with that.
I'll tell you, it's going to be
lights out. You're going to have trouble. Defense is going to have trouble covering him. That's that week 1 game. That's all we have to go on against Washington when Jackson had 2 50-yard plus touchdown catches. That's really what they want to do. But when you don't have these guys on the field, it's a dink and dunk, nobody could run type of offense, and it's tough to watch. But again, Wentz got the job done more or less. They got in the playoffs, but man, he needed help, and they got him help.
All right, before we move on to Miles Sanders, I want to ask you about Jalen Hurts and the idea that he might take some snaps away from Carson Wentz. I mean, the whole Taysom Hill thing makes you wonder how much of a part of the offense he's going to be,
Look, I expect something to happen
where maybe they put Hurts in as a running back, to his left or to his right. May not happen every game, or now the question is, in terms of Carson being a quarterback, are they going to take him off the field? First of all, right now, Sudfeld's the number 2, right? You would agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. To put Hurts on the field, he's going to have to play another position. It could be a running back to his left or to the right. Could you have him being a wildcat quarterback? Yes. Then that would require taking Wentz off the field. I don't see it being very much. For Jalen Hurts, Geoff, he's got to be the backup quarterback in year 2. Year 1, let him learn the offense. Doug Peterson, Geoff, as you know, talked about it this week in his media briefing about, that they're not getting him on the field. They're not getting him on grass.
All right.
That's why I don't see him as a factor.
Right. Well, 2 things to that. One, I mean, even if Carson is behind center or in the shotgun and Hurts is on the field, there is the, opportunity in that situation where Hurts could still be the thrower of the football in a gadget play, and that would take some stats away. But I think we're only, as you're mentioning, how often are we going to see that? It's not going to be like 25% of the offense.
Right.
Where
not
you're going
many. Not many. And fantasy,
I don't think it'll matter.
So I took a look at Drew Brees' stats last year. Now, remember, he missed, I think, 5 games that Teddy Bridgewater had to start
with the
last
thumb.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I looked, Drew Brees still averaged 270 yards per game passing, which puts him on about 4,300 yards passing, right? The pace that he was on. And he still threw 27 touchdowns, which put him on a pace for over 30. So even with Taysom Hill playing a pretty significant, albeit small, role in the offense, Drew Brees still was able to put up numbers that are Drew Breesian, at least for the last 3. Right? He's not throwing for 5,000 yards anymore or 45 touchdowns like he used to, but he can still get you 4,330 to 32 touchdowns, even with Taysom Hill on the field. So as we look at Carson Wentz, the opportunity is still there for Carson to have big numbers.
Yes, it is. But what's going to take away from
that, Geoff, to kind of bring that along a little bit, in the red zone, particularly maybe inside the 5-yard line, he may come in a wildcat package. That's annoying. I've seen it before. That's a way to get him on the field, Jalen Hurts. And that's where you could potentially take a touchdown or 2 away from Wentz. But overall, it's not a big deal. Don't overreact to it for fantasy purposes.
That is annoying, I would think, as a fan and even maybe as a media member, because if there's one thing you can say about Carson, even with his struggles last year, he's been, I think, the number 1 or number 2 ranked quarterback in the red zone going back for the last 2 or 3 years. He was unbelievable in the red zone last year. He had a passer rating over 110, I believe, in the red zone last year. So no interceptions. That's kind of where Carson shines in the red zone. So
they throw a lot in the red zone.
It'll be interesting.
They have. They were incredible in 2017. That was incredible. And again, they will throw
the tight ends there. Mm-hmm. They're a pretty interesting group because they've got the best tight end tandem in the league right now, or certainly one of the top 3. The Rams have a pretty good one, but the Eagles have a really good one. Then you have all that speed on the outside. This thing could be really special, but so much has to happen.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Speaking of special, Miles Sanders, who I think people have been feuding with you on Twitter because
It's-
you dared to mention that Miles Sanders was going to be the man for the Eagles this year, which is absolutely true. I think all of their moves or lack thereof behind him have shown you that. Miles Sanders last year, Adam, had 1,327 combined yards, 818 rushing, and 509 receiving. That number just jumps out at me. 50 catches for 509 yards for a guy who barely caught the ball in college on anything other than dump offs.
Yeah, it's funny with Miles Sanders.
This time last year, Geoff, if you remember, after the draft, he wasn't practicing because he had a hamstring strain. Then I was told later on, we actually put it on a show last year, he had a strain on the other hamstring, so they shut him down. He never got any work in their offseason after that. He was barely on the field. He was only in the rookie minicamp, and that was it. They shut him down. So he gets to training camp. I'm there the first day, and my mouth dropped. I was like, holy bleep. Wow. This kid jumps off the page. And then he clearly beat out Jordan Howard. He was clear. He opened the season pretty much as the starter. And then what happened was, unfortunately, he had a setback in week 2. He wasn't against Atlanta. That was an awful game for the Eagles. That was one of the worst games they've had in years. Everything happened. Jackson didn't play. Did Jeffrey play in that game? I don't even remember.
Goddard didn't play? No, Jeffrey Goddard left early, and Deshaun didn't play.
Right.
So he basically had the top 3 guys out.
Yeah, somehow they've got that game to overtime. I don't know how, but Nelson Aguilar had the awful drop of the year. My God.
Yes.
You'll see him running open. He drops it. But Sanders had a bad game. He got benched. He didn't hit the hole, the A gap, B gap. If the place was the A, he hit the B and vice versa. They benched him, and he lost the starting job. And then let's move this forward. Here's where he became special. When Jordan Howard suffered that odd injury, it was really basically the nerve wouldn't fire back up, the stinger injury. He had a long-term one. No one knew it at the time, but he just wasn't ready. And then over a 6-game stretch, I'm going to drop the last game against the Giants because they blew him out, so they pulled Sanders. There was a 6-game stretch. Over that 6-game stretch, he averaged over 19 touches per game. That, to me, is a little bit on the high mark. They kind of rode him.
They needed to, right?
Right, they did, and it worked. What they want to do, Geoff, let's move into this, because I know people the thing that people have, the fantasy people have an issue with, they're so scared that the Eagles are going to bring in a veteran to take some of the role from them. They're really not. As I was explained to me by someone who would know, they want an insurance policy, A, if Sanders could not play due to injury, or, you want to get a rotation in. You want to have someone behind him. Right now, they don't have that guy. Corey Clement, because of his injury history, Geoff, you can't depend on him. He's on a 1-year veteran minimum deal, no guaranteed money. He's not guaranteed, by the way, to make the team. We think he will, but he's not guaranteed to do it. Boston Scott was a great discovery for them, but yeah, he did have 2 games where he carried the ball over 10 times. He's not built to sustain 15 to 17 carries if they needed to do that.
Right.
So they need to go get a veteran. That's where they're at with it.
And they probably will, but as you've mentioned, this is going to be the Miles Sanders show as far as, getting most of the time there. So I think it's fair to say, let's try to get a projection on numbers and then see where that fits in a draft, right? He had 1,300 combined yards last year, 800 rushing, 500 receiving. I don't know if he's going to have 500 receiving yards again. You talked about how much they had to use him last year, especially as a receiver because of their lack of receivers. I mean, 500 as a rookie is incredible, but I do think at least 350, and I would think his rushing numbers will be in around 10 to 1,100. So you're looking at anywhere to me between 1,350 and 1,550, depending on how successful he winds up being. I think you can find 8 to 10 touchdowns in there. To me, he's low first round, early second.
Yeah, that's it. I have him late 1, early 2.
He's going early to mid second round right now. Again, folks, I know some people are more. Some people are higher more on Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb could be sharing a little bit with Kareem Hunt. Sanders at worst is going to be a 2-to-1 split. I've got him for 240 carries, somewhere around 15 to 16 a game. That could be a little bit lower than that, depending on which veteran they sign, depending on how games go. If they're blowing every team out, this Eagles defense is going to be so much better than they were last year. We're in our next ITB TV, we're going to talk receivers and we're going to talk tight ends and probably their fantasy defense, which I think could be pretty good, way better than it has been.
Right.
Because the personnel is going to be better. So I think when you look at Sanders last season, once Howard went down, he had carry games of 17, 15, 19, and 20, 12, and 11. Again, and the Patriots game, he only had 11 because they got behind. In the Seahawks game, they got behind. So, they didn't have he didn't have a lot of carries.
Right.
But, man, when they're rolling, 19 against the Redskins, in a game that was fairly competitive, a game against the Cowboys, which they had to have at home. Game was close. He had 20 carries. In the final game of the Giants, I'm not going to count because they blew them out. That was not even close. They just blew him out of the water. And he only had 9 carries and they pulled him. So, I'm going to say somewhere around 15 carries a game, 3 to 5 catches.
3 to 5
game.
catches. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm saying 15, 18 touches per game. Some weeks, again, I gave you that number. He was averaging over 19 over that 6-game stretch. That might be a little high depending on who they bring in, but you don't have to worry about it. And the other thing is, Geoff, you know this because you're a Penn State guy. He's got such ability to break any carry or break any catch. He's going to have some games where he does have home run ability. He has some he'll have a couple games like that Buffalo game where you go, oh my God, he only had 11 touches, but he had a 75-yard run. Well,
right. He had 3 carries for 77 yards, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. So he's got that special. His upside is top 7.
Right. So let's. I was just going to go there with you. McCaffrey, Barkley, Chubb, Elliott, and probably Derrick Henry are in some form or fashion.
Kamara.
Top 5. Yeah. Kamara 6. After Kamara, I think then you start to get into that Mixon, Josh Jacobs, and I would say throw Miles Sanders in there because when you start to get past that, you start to look at offensive philosophies and the ability to catch the ball and systems and everything involved, and you just have to like everything that's around Miles Sanders and the coaching staff and what they want to do with him.
Yeah, if I was drafted right now, I would go late 1. So you mentioned
McCaffrey, Barkley, Dalvin Cook, Elliott, Henry.
I didn't mention Cook, by the way, because I always worry about his injuries. So I said McCaffrey.
He's going high, though. He's going high.
Okay, McCaffrey, Barkley, Elliott, Chubb, Derrick Henry, then Kamara and Dalvin Cook. That's 7 right there.
Right. Mixon is going to go higher.
He is going higher now, and I don't have a problem with Mixon going higher, but here's the reason why I'm taking Sanders over Mixon. Let's look at football team. I had Joe Mixon. I made a dumb mistake last year. I was in 6 leagues. I got him in all 6. Well, he was like Jekyll and Hyde. First half, horrendous.
Right.
Bad football team. They benched the quarterback. NFL's worst offensive line. Second half of the season, defense improved just a little bit, but the big story was they were more. They started to be more efficient on offense. They were hanging in games just a little bit better. And they rode him, and he was incredible, just incredible. I wish we could have flip-flopped both sides, but anyway, I am going to probably take Mixon over him right now, but depending on, let's put it this way: average draft position, he's going higher. The early draft position, average draft position, ADP in fantasy right now. But if you go by that, you're taking Mixon. But me personally, I'm taking Sanders because here's what I trust: the play caller's better. The offensive line is 100 times better. Football team is 100 times better. Oh, by the way, he's got a great quarterback. He's always going to have touches because he's special as a talent. He's going to be on a top 5, top 17.
There you have it. All right, next episode, Adam, we're going to talk about Eagles pass catchers and some defensive players as we finish off the discussion on Eagles
tight ends too.
Football.
Tight ends too.
Oh, yeah, well, I said pass catchers. Tight ends are pass catchers.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, I see what you mean. Right. Receivers, tight ends, and fantasy defense.
Yeah,
I think it would surprise you because they were bad last season.
They just did not. The turnovers, man. Where the hell have the turnovers been with this football team?
They have not been there. So we will definitely get into that on the next ITB TV. That's going to do it for this one. I want to thank our producer, Hunter Brody. Find his work on his YouTube channel, Sports Talk with Broads. Catch the latest Inside the Birds podcast on any podcast platform that you use. And also make sure you check out InsideTheBirds.com. We have a lot of fresh content up there, including an off-season review series that we've been writing about. So make sure you go to InsideTheBirds.com. Have a happy Memorial Day weekend, everybody. Celebrate. Remember those whose lives were lost defending our country. And we'll catch you on the next edition of Inside the Birds TV.